Zealand Tech Podcast, the voice of the tech community, proudly supported by Umbrella Connect.
Greetings and welcome along to the New Zealand Tech Podcast. We are at episode 486. I'm Paul Spain. With me today is Paul Brislin. Welcome along, Paul.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Always good to have you on the show, Paul.
It's great to be here. Looking forward to it.
Now, maybe you can remind listeners where you fit into this big wide world of tech in New Zealand.
Well, I am a public relations consultant for a number of tech companies. I am a former tech journalist, and I still keep my hand in from time to time, doing a little bit for the Internet of IT Professionals, the Institute of IT Professionals, ITP. I look after their blog, techblog.nz. And other than that, I just hang around trying out new gear, which is always good fun.
Yes, well, always enjoy your opinions, Paul. You always bring a fresh perspective to things. And
I have opinions.
And you usually have some interesting and insightful opinions. So I'm looking forward to that again today.
Good.
Now, before we jump in, a huge thank you to all the brands that stand behind the New Zealand Tech Podcast and make the show possible. So thank you to Sumo Logic, to Vodafone New Zealand, Spark, Vocus, HP, Samsung, Gorilla Technology, and of course our new headline sponsor, Umbrella Connect. So great to have all of those partners on board, and look, it's really appreciated what they do to support the tech community and the tech world here in New Zealand, and the New Zealand Tech Podcast is part of that. So let's jump straight into the news. Now, this week, Paul, both of us are sitting here using our Macs.
We are.
And our first topic is about this ThiefQuest malware that puts Macs at risk. Now, there is a little I guess, an aspect here that, hopefully for most Mac users leaves you reasonably safe from this malware. Now, what we know about ThiefQuest is that so far it's being distributed through pirated software. So, hopefully, certainly within the business world, that leaves, most organisations reasonably safe from this.
Yeah, you would hope so.
But it is really a sign of the times, isn't it? And, we've seen different stats over the last few years talking about an incredible uptick in malware on Macs. But we haven't sort of seen or heard too much of this malware. But this one really stands out in that it does key logging. It sort of creates a sort of command and control type center on a Mac once it gets in there. And it just, also happens to, encrypt
massive
your data
ransomware attack and lock it all down. And we're not used to it, are we, in the Mac world? I mean, PCs, I think, over the years we've become familiar with the need to update virus software and patch things and keep it all up to date. Mac users have always sat there smugly going, oh yes, I don't have to do that. We're so obscure. Nobody writes viruses for us. And yet here we are. And I think it's a sign of the times that Mac is becoming much more acceptable in enterprise. The ability to run Windows apps and things of that sort on the Mac is improving daily.
Well, no, it's about to disappear, Paul.
Well,
because they're changing.
They are
from
changing.
Intel chips,
They are.
You
So
won't
it'll
be
be
able to
very
run
interesting.
your Windows software natively
Well,
anymore.
it'll that's gonna create a whole new realm of testing, isn't it?
Yes,
but
it will,
but it does. I think you're seeing more Macs in more places now than ever before.
Yeah.
Probably off the back of the success of the iDevices, and it's great to see, because I think it does give you a certain amount of robustness if you're not all, your entire enterprise isn't all running the same equipment. You're much less prone to getting something nasty taking you all out. But here we are with ransomware on the Mac, which is a couple of years ago would have been unheard of, wouldn't it? It's just amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it has been growing for a number of years. I remember presentation probably 18 months ago where they were looking at the uptick in malware on a Mac, and it was growing in hundreds of percent per annum.
Yeah,
obviously off quite a low base, but this one seems to be, hey, yeah, this is a really big deal.
Yeah.
I hope that it doesn't get too widespread, and it has been, I guess, the less of a target as a platform than Mac because it was a smaller percentage.
Yeah.
And there were some aspects of what Apple did from a security standpoint that were were good, and installing and running software from online. Well, Apple really actually pushed pretty hard to distribute through the Mac App Store.
That's
and
right.
Because Apple users are so used to doing the same on their iPhones,
Yep.
that's worked reasonably well, and more of the Mac software is available through that mechanism. Plenty of software that's not, but they're sort of defaulting to a Mac basically not allowing you to directly install. That certainly helped. But look, I don't think that these days you can say that a Mac is really any safer than any other platform, other
That's
than
right.
that it's a smaller target because of the smaller market share. And I think we'll see more of these things. So I know Microsoft now have their endpoint security suite available on the Mac, and more vendors do, and it's just another area that needs to be taken seriously and treated in an appropriate way.
I think you're right, and I think we've got to remember that the weak link is always the human behind the keyboard, not the keyboard itself. And what we're seeing now is more and more penetration into the enterprise space, in particular, that the Macs have got. It's not just the designers and the cool kids in town. It's all the way through the food chain. That's great, but it also means that they are another attack vector to get into an organization. And we've seen a couple of big high-profile cases in the last couple of weeks with Toll Group in Australia being hit with ransomware, and also Lion, the brewery company.
And Fisher
likewise,
& Paykel, so, there's a
lot of it going on. It's not just kids in basements anymore. This is organised crime, and in some cases, as the Australians are talking about at the moment, state-level actors coming in and seeing what trouble they can cause, which is really rather remarkable.
Yeah, and I guess that brings us on to one of the other risks and issues that we've seen. And unfortunately, this has hit Team New Zealand, which are these ongoing scams around either fake or modified invoices. And basically where an expected invoice comes in, but it's got on it not the bank account number of who you should be paying, but of somebody else. And there's a range of ways in which that happens. What I've heard seems to be possibly the most common is basically one of the email systems will get compromised at one end or the other. And then when a party is maybe getting looped in, they've got a sort of a hidden forwarding of all the emails that an individual or an organisation sends. Probably usually it's an individual mailbox. They've compromised that of somebody in say the accounts side, and so they're getting looped in on all these communications. Then what they do is side by side they will set up a parallel email address that looks so similar to the real one.
Couple of letters the wrong way around.
And or an extra letter or a .co rather than a .co.nz or a .com.
Things that you won't check on a regular basis.
Right. And then when it comes time, they can see that the transactions at the end, it needs to be paid for. They get in first. Here's the invoice. Please pay it immediately, etc. And it seems like this is unfortunately what happened, and they just didn't seem to have those. I think they're quite well known these days in business.
You would think so.
When you're paying an invoice to a new bank account number, you don't just take what's come in on the electronic communication.
No, you
that
ring
needs
someone.
to be verified, and not with the phone number that's on the bottom of the email, because you don't know who that actually goes to. But
where that
you
lives.
verify that properly.
Yeah.
And look, I really hope that we can do better at this as a country. And for anyone that's listening, if you're not absolutely sure your organisation has this in place, now's the time to raise the flag. And it doesn't matter where you
Kick
sit
up a
within
stink.
an organisation, if there's any chance that this isn't in place.
Yep.
And look, I know most organisations do have it in place now,
Yeah,
but if
yeah.
there's any chance for whatever reason, you've got maybe, it's a new business or it's this or that, and there just isn't that sort of tech savvy
rigor.
knowledge
Yeah.
to have understood the need to establish this process. Now's the time, because this is impacting the New Zealand economy. In this case, we're talking
yeah, exactly.
a $250 million enterprise, right? In New Zealand, they're a
That's
big
right.
scale organisation who has pressed the flush button on $1 million that's gone
That's
from our economy.
Yep.
And it's gone in our chance also to win the America's Cup.
Yep.
We don't want more of this stuff going on. And we know, look,
That's
it's all accidental. It's never,
Yep. It's not
deliberate,
deliberate.
from,
Yeah.
and we hope it's never,
Yeah.
deliberate. And look, I guess there is that added risk around processes because there is the potential at some point that with these types of things, we could see insiders get involved as well. And
Yeah.
I've not ever heard of that, happening in these sorts of scenarios. But when there's so much
there's
money
potential.
money
Yeah,
at
yeah.
stake, it's really important to have good,
Yep.
robust processes. It's not like the old days where a
Yep.
check was written out and it was, it's to that company, it has to go into
has
that
to go in
company's
there.
account.
No,
and-
these are just a
and
string of
so on,
numbers,
right?
Yeah,
So-
yeah. And especially at the moment with so many companies somewhat disrupted by COVID, and we've still got people rightly working from home, working remotely. Normal processes seem to have fallen down a little bit, and it's not uncommon now. I don't know about you. I get inundated with messages from different clients and different parts of their businesses via Teams, via WhatsApp, via email. I haven't had anybody bug me on LinkedIn yet, but I'm sure it's only a matter of time. They've text messages. Keeping track of all of that's quite difficult. And if somebody sends me a thing and I'm in accounts and somebody sends me a Snapchat or a WhatsApp saying, hey, look, just pay that thing, maybe that's the new way of working. Maybe I should just...
or that our bank account numbers changed.
That's
Did you
right.
get the change?
Yeah.
Here's what it,
Oh, you
here's
must
what
have
it
fallen
should
off the
be.
list. Oh, it's
Yeah,
terribly quick.
Here's the
Process
new
it
detail,
now.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
And even an
It's not
incoming
uncommon.
phone call,
Yeah, yeah.
right? You've got to verify it the other way.
How many of those have you had where you've had the bank ring you and they say, no, we just want to verify your details? And I say to them, no, you've just phoned me. I'm not telling you anything. You verify your details.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
really
tricky.
important. And
It
I
is.
see there are some recommendations around doing a dual verification on
Yep.
these things via phone, and that sort of thing makes a lot of sense,
Yeah,
particularly where it's a big payment. Sure,
Oh, absolutely.
if it's a $20 payment, then look,
maybe you can wear it.
Who
Yep.
cares? The amount of effort to go in to
That's right.
verify that. Although realise that once that number is verified and in your system, if the first payment's 20, but the next one's
20,000.
20,000, the second payment is probably going to go through.
Yeah,
So the idea of actually just having a robust process around these things is really important.
It's
and
essential.
at the moment, there's money disappearing out of New Zealand's economy every day. And I wish that was something that we
Exactly.
really could step up on.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, older listeners will remember back to the Otago District Health Board getting ripped off by an IT manager.
An insider.
Yes. Who ran a fake scam, a fake invoice scam, much like the sort of things we're talking about, and took them for millions and millions of dollars because he was approving single sign-off. I'll just approve these invoices. Oh, look, they happen to be paying them into my bank account. And it took many years to catch him, and I don't think they've recovered half the money.
Well, that side of
so-
it is sadly reasonably common. I think probably in many countries. There's the ones that have hit the media. I've come across other ones behind the scenes where working with a firm.
Yep.
And they say, oh look, unfortunately we're having to close these parts of our business down. What happened was we had somebody sitting in a position of authority who was, basically
Siphoning money
creating
off.
creating these, fake invoices and money getting siphoned out of the business. So it's not as though these things are new. It's just there are new approaches
That's right.
to how they happen.
Yep.
And it does come down to having good, robust processes and understanding who are these people that are being paid,
Yeah.
and are you absolutely verifiably sure. I came across one instance where an organisation, they had the process in place. They called up the party. They were in another country.
Yep.
Their question was, rather than, can you confirm what your bank account number is,
Yes.
have you changed your bank account number recently? Yes, we have. They hung up the phone and put the money through.
Yep.
They didn't verify
Didn't
the number.
verify it. Yep.
And in that case, they got scammed because
Yep.
it had been exactly one of these cases.
Exactly.
Very similar looking
Yeah,
email
yeah.
address. They actually been getting copied in on all these emails.
Yep.
And bit of a
Yeah,
shocker.
yeah.
All right.
Absolutely.
enough on
careful.
that one.
Yeah.
We do need to be careful.
Yep.
EncroChat.
Yeah. Speaking of rat bags.
Yeah, boy, what a shocker.
So this is astounding, isn't it? They ran an encrypted phone network in Europe, which allowed you to make these phone calls and share information in a totally safe and secure environment, and was predominantly used by mastermind criminals to conduct all kinds.
It was
nefarious.
really expensive to be a part of, right? So
exactly, that's usually a giveaway, isn't it?
I mean, the concept was basically you would buy this special handset that
Right.
had their EncroChat software, pre-installed. You would pay a running fee
Yep.
to utilize it, and as long as you put your communications through their channel, they were guaranteeing that you would be kept safe. They'd made physical modifications
Right.
to the device.
Yep.
So camera, microphone, GPS, and UPS ports apparently were all removed.
All locked down.
Right? So
Yep.
it was quite heavily locked
Yeah, yeah.
down from that perspective. And then you also had an ability as you could see this is targeting criminals, but there
Yep.
might be a few others would have some, semi-legitimate uses. I don't know.
Yep.
You could enter a PIN code. Let's say, police caught you if you're very quick, and it would delete all your
wipe
messages
everything.
off the
Yeah,
device.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it was around a super secure
Yep.
messaging. That was its whole purpose. Now,
Yes.
some lessons here is that actually these things aren't always as secure as
No.
as what you might imagine. Oh, yeah. So
And so how many?
they were
so the
£1,600 a month for the devices.
You've got to
so
sell a
you're
lot of heroin
you're
to
talking
children
about
for that.
$40K a year to run this.
Yeah.
Look, just some advice if we've got anyone listening that wants to encrypt their messages. You can actually just install a simple app on your phone that will probably do a better job. But
And won't alert the authorities. And so in the UK, 746 people have been arrested. The crimes range from murder and gun smuggling, drug trafficking, you name it, and they've seized £54 million in cash and 1.5 tons of cocaine. I mean,
that's
quite a
insane,
coup.
isn't it? That is absolutely huge.
That is a clean sweep, and probably they just rolled up the whole network and found everybody they needed to. Many years ago, I interviewed a security expert from IBM who said the internet is the best thing that's ever happened to policing and monitoring of criminal activity, because these masterminds are all putting everything up online thinking they're super safe and secure.
Yep.
And here they are getting caught left, right and centre and being provable and traceable and trackable through everything they've done, whether it's digital copyright theft or child pornography offences, or as we see here, real world crime. They're not that smart. They've shared all the information they need to with the authorities.
Yeah, well, in this case, the authorities did well to be able to hack the system. The provider of the service of EncroChat, they hadn't known about it, so
Yep.
it was happening apparently without their knowledge. And they said as soon as they found out it had been compromised, I imagine they would have realised that their lives were probably at risk,
The
right?
goose is
You
cooked,
charge
yes.
somebody that much and then it doesn't work, or they get put in jail. So they said they shut it down as soon as they found
Yeah.
out that the authorities had compromised it, which was basically after the authorities had arrested, these nearly 750 people. But yeah, just incredible in terms of what they got back.
Yeah.
But it does, for me, raises that debate or discussion again. And, I see it from both perspectives around encrypting communications, because if this was properly encrypted by a proper public service, then the police would have had no chance of actually getting in and looking at it. And I know your point, that there is a lot of stuff that the authorities can do online, but when criminals are maybe are very switched on with their use
a little bit smarter
of the technology, then you create a situation where we just don't have the same, from a legal standpoint, the same abilities as were there in the past in terms of tapping phone lines, getting access to text messages, and you used to work at Vodafone, so you would have been aware of some of those things that were able to be done. Those sort of channels get shut down. So I sort of see those aspects of we want to protect people's privacy, but over time, I think these sort of scenarios, and realistically, this is people that, if they were using one of many other services, they would not have actually been stopped. But this has likely saved lives in terms of murders and in terms of the amount of drugs and money. So the outcome was good. But I'm not sure we'll see too many of these types of scenarios in the future.
No. And I think you're quite right. I think criminal activity or terrorist activity, they always roll that out as an excuse, don't they, when they want to bring in new laws and new restrictions. The Australian government said, well, we don't care about the difficulty of it. You will provide a backdoor access to all. Just do it. And I'm not sure that's helpful, but you can understand their frustration that they just, these products are out there and they make life incredibly difficult. Having said that, so do locks on doors and dark tinted windows in cars. So where do you start and where do you stop with all of this? And I think it's an area that needs exploring, and it needs proper public debate, because we tend to give away a lot or assume an awful lot without really understanding the issues. So it's high time we did. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, the Iranians and their work with what we're told is nuclear power has been threatened in the past, and it seems to have come up again. And now Iran are saying that they will retaliate against any nations who carry out cyber attacks on their nuclear sites. And this is coming from their head of civilian defence. And there was a fire at their plant, which some of their officials are saying was actually caused by a cyber sabotage. So this wouldn't be the first time in history they've had those sorts of challenges. And no doubt, because there are some countries that would believe that the Iranians work with nuclear energy possibly has some more nefarious aspects to it, particularly the Israelis.
Who don't take kindly to these kinds of things.
No, not on their backdoor step, I suppose. And the Americans too. So, it's always interesting when we see countries getting involved in the sort of cyber warfare.
That attack capability.
Possibly things that is actually good for the world as a whole. But mostly these sorts of things, and we heard of Australia being attacked just in the the last fortnight, and probably not for any good reasons, but
Yeah.
generally these come into they're very political
Yeah.
things. So what I think might be good, you might think, well, not so much. Look, the Iranians still need to provide the basics of power and water and
That's
so
right,
on for their
reticulation.
people, and what they're doing is completely legitimate. Now, I don't know, but I'm assuming that these countries have a little bit more
little
data
bit more
than,
insight.
than
Well-
I do, and I would hope they
Yeah.
would what they would be doing would only be done if it were
Legitimately,
the
if it were
right thing
required.
to be doing. But,
Although in
who
this
knows?
day and age, who knows exactly? I was interested to see. Speaking about Australia, I was interested. The Prime Minister came out with this announcement that there was not an imminent attack, but that they were seeing an increased level of activity.
That's right.
And his response was to put a lot more money into cyber warfare capability, not just on the defence side, but also to build for the first time Australia's cyber attack capability. So we're now going a step in the other direction, and it's a bit like having a spy agency, isn't it? If you've got a spy agency, then maybe I need one too to spy on your spy agency. You're going to need a counter spy agency, and before you know it, we're knee deep in spies. I suspect the same thing is going to happen with cyber security. Well, if Australia's got an attack capability, then perhaps New Zealand needs one as well, just to be on the safe side in case we have to attack Australia's cyber capability. I don't know. It's that never-ending escalating cycle of you've got one, so I need one.
Yeah.
And it's a very interesting move coming as it does on the back of this kind of activity with the Iranians, because there is an awful lot more evidence now of state-level actions against other countries, against basic infrastructure. Covering Y2K all those years ago, 20 years ago now, there was a lot of concern about everything from traffic lights to nuclear power stations simply not working. And I remember at the time speaking to a number of engineers about New Zealand's capability, and they said, we've got nothing to worry about because most of our stuff is mechanical. And it's not actually on the internet because we're so far behind. So the dams, even the traffic lights, were all mechanical switches. Now the world has moved on, and we do have a lot more electronic capability in there. And it doesn't take an awful lot these days to tie up a resource. We saw that with the Stuxnet attack, the virus in the UK. Taking out the National Health Service. That kind of thing is devastating. And you could imagine that coming on the top of a COVID outbreak or something similar again, and you're talking about real people being put in a terribly difficult situation. So, I suspect we're going to see a lot more of the cybersecurity needs and wants of our nations as they all start to jostle for position. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it is a concern. So, I hope we find better and better ways to protect our systems. And look, of course, there are so many mechanisms to protect our technology, and I'm sure I've talked about this before. I don't think, as a whole, New Zealand does particularly well, and I see that time and time again when our team at Gorilla Technology go out and do these cybersecurity audits, or even just general technology auditing projects, and we see the really disappointing state of how businesses are operating. And I was on a call just in the last 24 hours with a party from offshore. Talking about a local New Zealand entity. They don't have complete control from where they are, and we were just talking through, some of the incredibly obvious, lackings in the way the New Zealand operation that they deal with is just completely lacking, and the team in New Zealand seems to just have no concept about why it's important to even follow 2 or 3 industry best practices,
Yeah.
let alone all the other more complicated things. So
Yeah,
anyway,
exactly.
there we go.
But they will learn one way or the other.
Yes, well, I liken it a little bit to if we go back to the early days of computing. Most people had to learn through pain that it's important to back up data, right?
That's right.
And it eventually got to the point where, hey, everybody knows you have to back up your
exactly.
data. Well, we're going through that same journey with cybersecurity,
Yeah.
where every organisation is learning,
Yep.
and every business leader is learning. Cybersecurity is a real and a present threat to their organisation, and as they get hit, and some organisations are getting hit multiple times.
That's right.
Toll Holdings, their one was right out in public that they got hit multiple times with ransomware. So, and as those things happen, then of course that causes some really big changes in behaviour. But unfortunately, this is what it often takes.
Yeah.
Now on to a couple of other topics, and then I want to come back and have a chat about Facebook. And
Okay.
I'm saying back because it's higher up on our
our
list here. But I realise that could be a rabbit warren. So before we dive into that, Paul, wanted to chat through a little bit about online video.
Yep.
Also, Rocket Lab.
Dear old Rocket Lab.
Boy,
What a kicker that was.
it was so sad to see their rocket effect.
Yep.
Well, we couldn't see it, but to know that their rocket was
That's
falling out of the sky
Yep.
on Sunday.
13th launch, and they've done so well so far.
Incredible.
And I'd actually stopped watching
Mind-blowing.
the feed because we were past all the tricky stuff. All they had to do now was launch the satellites, but unfortunately the payloads were all lost, and they're doing a lot of soul searching at the moment, trying to figure out just what went wrong and how it happened. But I think you do, in this kind of situation, you do learn an awful lot from a mistake more than you do from a clean launch. So they will be able to go through, hopefully figure out what caused the loss, what actually happened to the rocket, and the next one will be better, stronger, faster. And the beauty of the Rocket Lab model is that we're talking very small payloads, single millions of dollars for each unit rather than hundreds of millions of dollars. We've seen some spectacular failures in the past with entire missions lost at the final countdown. And that's cost hundreds of millions of dollars, and this is a much smaller scale. So, and that's exactly what Rocket Lab's selling point is.
Yeah.
All of these satellite guys. Years ago, I interviewed a man from Inmarsat who put up communication satellites. He said we budget to lose 1 in 3 satellites. So if we get all 3 up, then congratulations, we've got some spare. But we budget to lose 1 in 3, which is a huge failure rate. 33% tells you how dangerous it is still launching things into space. The sooner we get the space elevator built, Paul, the happier I'll be. But that could be a while off.
Space elevators for, I don't know how many
50
decades,
years and
probably
another
my whole
50
life.
to come. Yes, exactly.
That and flying cars.
Yeah.
Look, quite disappointing. I know for everybody involved, and Rocket Lab put their statement out. Later in the day on Sunday, there was a video there from Peter Beck.
Yep.
There is a huge amount of love for what Rocket Lab are doing. I think people around the world, their minds are blown that here in little old New Zealand, that actually we're putting rockets into space.
Yeah.
That the Electron. Hey, there's been 13 launches.
13 launches. I mean, that's
so far,
remarkable.
and they've just done so well.
Yeah.
And I mean, I saw a reply to the Rocket Lab video just on Twitter alone, well over 500,000 views. So they're attracting incredible attention. I saw Elon Musk replying. He said, "Sorry to hear this.
Yep.
Hope you get back to orbit soon. Rockets are hard." And look, for those of us old enough to remember when NASA were putting up the space shuttle.
The shuttle itself.
You know, they had done successful launches.
Yep.
And then with the Space Shuttle Challenger in '86, boom, and
Absolute
that
catastrophe.
was lives
Yeah.
lives at stake, and certainly not. The first time there had been a disaster.
Yep.
Possibly that was the biggest launch ever. I can't remember. There were a whole bunch of people aboard that one, and it probably was the biggest launch in terms of people
Loss of life.
that were going up. And so look, challenging stuff, but they've done so well to date, and I would be very, very confident that they will get to the bottom of this.
Yeah,
They
absolutely.
tend to be able to get the data and to understand it. It likely is going to put things on hold as they do that research,
gotta work
which is
through all of that.
disappointing while
Yep.
they're scaling up. And we just talked in the last probably last week around how exciting it was. It's like about 3 weeks or so.
Yep.
A little bit longer with some of the weather challenges, but around 3 weeks or so between
launches. Yeah.
And so not quite down to where they've talked about wanting to get, where they could be doing a launch for every 72 hours. But I mean, boy, they're very much leading the way globally, and of course we've got other stuff going on out of Christchurch or out of the South Island as well, and there's certainly, it'll be interesting to pick up and hear more about what's happening down there. So very exciting what's going on in New Zealand.
Yep.
And Peter Beck for me, I think is absolutely incredible in terms of
He's
his
very focused.
his achievements and
Yep.
that of Rocket Lab. And I called him out in a talk that I was doing this morning as one of those real inspiration points for New Zealand. So look forward to what's next, and I hope they can move through this quickly and continue launching. Now, on to other topics. Lightbox and Neon, they've now merged. So, nice to see that consolidation.
Neilbox. Light on. No. What have they gone with? It's just Neon, isn't it?
So, I mean, I think what's good here is that we know that Netflix just was so dominant in the market, and having two players sort of competing for a very small slice market share, pretty hard. So seeing them come together, hopefully they will be able to gain a bit more traction, and this will work out well. I saw an announcement email come through from Amazon Prime Video that they've just launched their app on Windows 10. So this is part of the competition that our local players are having to deal with. So it's not just Netflix.
In the big water now.
You've got Amazon playing. Now I asked them.
Apple's come to town.
We've got a bunch. Quibi. As well, which most people haven't heard of or tried. The one that the content will work just supposedly, and I sort of agree. It's filmed to be just as good landscape or portrait.
Right.
It's a bit of fun. And actually, they've had a recent update that you can now display that onto your TV. It was limited to just your mobile device, which was a little bit rubbish. So I'm sure Samsung, with their spinning TV that you can have in portrait to show your portrait video from your phone, will be quite pleased. You can now push that video there as well. But Amazon Prime Video, they've just launched their app on Windows 10. But what they couldn't tell me is as much about their local catalogue. I see their US catalogue. I'm still linked up to my US Amazon Prime account, and so I see this much bigger catalogue. You've got a local catalogue. We had a look at it recently, and a few minutes ago, and it's not a huge catalogue, is it, locally?
It's not. None of them are. That's the thing. Netflix, even the only one that's really pulled themselves together is Disney Plus. Where I don't think ours is any different to any other Disney Plus around the world. But in terms of content, Netflix were well off the boil, and Amazon Prime is quite light. I found a good-looking Canadian TV show on there, and for some reason it was saying, coming in July, and when I clicked on it, it said not available in your country, and now it's disappeared off Amazon Prime entirely.
Oh, okay.
So I
Whereas
think
I'm
they're
used
still
to that
having a
with
few
my
issues.
US account. If I fire that up in New Zealand, you
It's
basically
a
have to
thou
have a
shalt not.
VPN or
Yeah.
or a proxy to
to
make
see
that
the good
work.
stuff.
But when you do, you see what a behemoth that Amazon Prime
It's a
or
big
Amazon
player.
Video is, because not only have they got their core catalog,
Yep.
but then you can tap into all the
All the
extras, the
others.
HBOs
Yeah,
and so on. And really with Lightbox and Neon coming together, that's sort of the closest we've got to
to a real digital player.
quite a strong
We've got-
catalog.
we've
Although
got TVNZ.
to be fair, I
Yeah.
find the Netflix catalog is actually pretty deep in New Zealand.
Well,
like I know it's
there's enough for
probably
me.
at the smallest end of
Yeah,
what's
yeah.
available. Australia's got a bigger catalog. I can sit in the Tesla and watch that because that has an the SIM plan is linked to Australia.
Of course it is.
So I just turn off the Wi-Fi if I want to watch something that's in Australia but not in New Zealand.
Sit in the car, watch it on the big screen.
Well, I did have to do that recently during lockdown when there was a digital or text message queuing at the supermarket, and there was a big wait.
Oh yeah, you had the big wait.
Over
Yes,
It was Queen's birthday, so a
Yep.
little while back. But anyway, so it's good to see activity happening on this front. I wish Sky all the best
Yep.
with the new Neon. And I hope we will just see their offerings getting better and better. And we'll probably have to get them back in on the show to hear a little bit more about their work. But I like this. I think this is a good move from Sky.
I think so. I think it's they've got the right technology, and hopefully they can put behind them some of the problems that we've seen in the past with Sky Go and these kind of predecessors, these dinosaurs. The landscape locally, we've still got TVNZ On Demand and 3 Now. Both of which are pretty good. I'm still staggered we don't have
and a Freeview.
The Freeview app will allow you to jump between them all quite freely, and it is on the TV, not on the device. So you've got that step up for those consumers who aren't that techie. But we're still lacking. We don't have that mass back catalogue of New Zealand content that's sitting there. I wanted to see Sleeping Dogs. You can buy it online, which is a minor miracle. But the interface is so clumsy and so awful to use. It doesn't remember where you were up to. It's just through the browser. It was a pretty poor experience. There's no sign of any of that, anybody spending any money to make that a better experience. And unfortunately, all of that history of New Zealand television is just locked up in the archives, never to be seen again. So I think we've still got a long way to go. And I'm still very angry with the BBC, which has everything on iPlayer in the UK, but won't sell access to it outside, lest it cannibalises its own market. So those of us who actually want to watch UK television and can't find it in New Zealand, because why would they screen a show in Welsh about a policeman? It's rather vexing that it's available, but not to me because I'm in the wrong place.
Yeah. Where did you buy the program you mentioned from?
So that was through NZ On Screen.
Oh, okay. So they're selling content now,
So
because
you can-
originally NZ On Screen, hundreds. It says here 753 plus hours of content.
Yep.
What I recalled was you could stream basically all this old stuff for free from their platform. So if they're starting to charge, maybe that means they're going to put some more money, or they're going to take some of the money that the government pours into New Zealand On Air and put it
make
into
it available.
developing something better.
Yep.
I would just my gut feel, I would expect a better result if they just partnered with, say, a Neon or somebody else.
Yeah, and let them do the tech.
Rather than them trying to and lacking the the finance for starters to keep an app cutting edge and working really, really well. But
that's
that
right.
would just be the immediate conclusion I would jump to on that front.
Yep.
But anyway, we'll see how that
We'll see
progresses.
how we
These
get
things are getting easier and cheaper all the time. Now, on to Facebook. Oh, before we jump onto Facebook, New Zealand COVID Tracer, do we need the app anymore? Yes or no?
Well, I'd like to see.
That a bit of a
no,
short one?
I scanned in on the way in here. I use it wherever I see the codes, but I do think we've got to because we don't have it in the community here, I think everybody's kind of gone, well, okay, that's done. I don't need to worry about it. I'd still like to see people tracking and tracing. The app is very basic, and that's probably, considering everything that's happened since, it's kind of fallen by the wayside as a priority. I totally understand that. But if we do see a resurgence, you really want to be able to track people and trace them. And at the moment, we're relying on my memory for what I was doing 3 days ago, and I've got no idea.
Yeah.
So that would be disastrous. So
Well, they have updated the app, which is good. You can go in and actually see where you've scanned now, which is good. I hope they keep developing it. Yes, it seems like we don't need it, but we may need it at any point. So,
and that's the key.
I just hope they keep investing in it.
Yeah.
And I know that there's probably a lack of interest at the moment, but as it stood as it launched, it was pretty weak. I think they keep investing in it. We end up with something that's actually pretty useful. Should we need it?
Yeah.
Now, lastly, Facebook. They're being
Those
boycotted
scoundrels.
by so many brands now who really the pushback is on this hate speech, on
extremist
especially
content.
in light of the Black Lives Matter movement, that it has still been a breeding ground for racist content. Which personally, I don't think there is room for this sort of stuff to continue. I think, look, there is some content that it's pretty hard to say, well, should or shouldn't this sort of discussion and debate be, where do you sort of draw the lines? And I know that, in the past there's been a real movement to, hey, we shouldn't online be blocking content, right?
Yeah.
We've had that in New Zealand whenever there's a discussion around, well, should kids be allowed access to this? And, look, putting up walls for content, not a good, not a good thing. It doesn't really work.
Yeah.
Yet, here's this big movement to say, Facebook, you need to sort of police the content. It's a really interesting discussion, and it's really hard for anyone to get right, because I don't think that there actually is a perfect right.
No.
Because whatever they do, and admittedly they've been not very successful, shall we say? And we had this discussion, last year. I had it across a whole bunch of media channels. Was this expectation that Facebook should be able to block live video of the shooting? That happened in Christchurch. They should have been able to block that, but actually technically doing that when there are so many mechanisms that get used to trick filters. There's video games with shooting difficult. And all sorts of things. That stuff's hard. This stuff is hard. What do you think? Does Facebook just need to be shut down? Is that the simple answer?
To be honest, or you would, don't get me started. I think there are a number of things that Facebook should do that it's not doing, and it all revolves around Facebook either spending money to do things well, or making changes to the algorithm that it uses to share content. And neither of those things are on Facebook's radar whatsoever. It has no interest in spending large amounts of money to upskill its moderators, to put in place a better reporting program. I badger people who are 5G crazies and loons all the time, and I report posts when I see them, and I report websites when I see them, and I never once have
Well, you mean 5G is okay?
Yeah. We'll have another show about that, and we'll need a glass of wine, and then we can talk about 5G. But not once has Facebook ever come back to me to say, oh, yeah, we've upheld that. Yesterday, I spent half the day with a client trying to work out why Facebook wouldn't allow one of its ads to run. And it's probably because there's a picture of a child in the video that the video still that's being pulled through as part of the advertising campaign. But who can tell? Because the feedback from Facebook is just, this breaches our community standards. There's no way to then say, oh, can I talk to somebody? Because I'd like to give you some money and I'd just like to work through that. There's no mechanism. They have built this self-fulfilling and isolated behemoth where the money flows in, they keep it all, and they're totally unwilling to accept any form of responsibility for even making it work. And I think that needs to be addressed as well. And it goes from extremist content all the way through to, people posting stuff. Now, the only time they ever make a change is when the money stream is threatened. And if
Great
you've ever
point.
put up a video of anything like a kid's birthday party and there is copyright music playing in the background, they'll have that video down so fast.
Because it costs them.
Because it'll cost them, exactly. They are a coin-fed operation, and if you threaten the money go round, they'll act. So they need to spend a bit of money on moderation, better tools, and then we can start in on the difficult stuff. And that's before we even get to whether or not they abide by New Zealand's privacy laws, because the Privacy Commissioner says they don't. And that's going to be difficult for them. And then, of course, we've got tax, and they should probably think about paying some at some point, because at the moment we're seeing a massive degradation of public services all around the world, and not to mention the media. And a lot of it is down to these giant multinationals playing games with their tax credits and moving them all around the world so that they don't have to support us. So, there's a lot they could be doing.
That's one that I think more work needs to go into, not just locally. This has got to happen around the world. And some of this has already taken place. So we've seen changes in the way that the biggest companies, the Facebooks and Googles and Microsofts and Amazons and so on, the rules that they have to play by has changed.
Yeah.
But I think there's still more work.
There's a lot more
work
that
to be
needs
done,
to be done
for it to end up fair for every country.
Yeah.
Well, lots of work to be done out there to solve the world's problems, Paul. I think that's probably a good place to a good place to leave it. So thank you very much for joining the show.
Thanks for having me along. It's always a blast.
And now you mentioned the tech blog that you're doing. Where do people track that down?
If they want to have a read, if they want the long form version of me ranting, techblog.nz is ITP's website, and I look after that. Or they'll find me on Twitter. I'm forever bleating on about things on Twitter, so come and argue with me. At Paul Brislin is nice and easy to find.
Excellent. And of course, I should mention Umbrella Connect have a growing suite of content online, including the New Zealand Tech Podcast, I hear. So there's another place to look out for content. And you can, of course, find us online, nztechpodcast.com. Across LinkedIn now, we have our new channel or page there for NZ Tech Podcast. We have, in the last little while, ended up on YouTube as well as Facebook for the video streams, and on Twitter as well. So, whichever is your favourite platform, then I hope you'll come and follow us and join us there. So thanks, everyone. We'll catch you again next week on the New Zealand Tech Podcast. See ya.
New Zealand's Tech Podcast, the voice of the tech community, proudly supported by Umbrella Connect.